Our Earth today is battling a vast cascade of environmental problems thanks to the actions of human beings that now threaten the continued ability of both natural and human systems to flourish. Rapid development of new technologies have depleted more and more of the planet's resources, and human activities have disrupted the natural order of the environment, adding harmful chemicals to the air, water and soil. One of the greatest challenges of 21st century is to solve the critical environment problems of the global warming, water scarcity, pollution and biodiversity loss. Climate change is a stark reality today, and to mitigate its adverse effects is the only path forward. Regions with a weak social and economic infrastructure, mostly in developing countries, will be the least able to cope without assistance to prepare and respond. To finance concrete adaptation projects and programs in developing countries that are parties to the Kyoto Protocol, an adaptation fund was established. Several adaptation fund projects employ ecosystem-based adaptation and nature-based solutions to help vulnerable communities adapt to the impacts of climate change. India is on the move, driven by aspirations of economic growth and powered by its youthful energy. And behind this phenomenal rise of the new India is the contribution of rural India. The growth of rural India is in fact powered by specialist institutions. The National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development is a sterling example of one such specialist institution. NABARD's accreditation with the Adaptation Fund has given the developed bank a sharp focus. Adaptation as an activity is very critical, as majority of the population depends on agriculture for livelihood, and agriculture is highly dependent on climate. Since its inception, NABARD has played a transformational role in eradicating underdevelopment in rural India by protecting the environment, empowering rural diaspora, especially women, credit and refinance, funding rural infrastructure, initiating development activities, and supervision of rural cooperatives and rural banks through policy advocacy. Success is about the difference you make in people's lives. NABARD success stories created by the billions of Indians, their endeavors, their achievements, and the smiles that spells the content. NABARD is a story of a billion dreams, a billion aspirations, and a billion smiles. The earth is a fine place and worth fighting for. The Himalayas are the most vulnerable to climate change. The Himalayan glaciers are retreating at a faster rate than the global average. Within the Himalayan range is the state of Uttarakhand. Almost 90% of the state is mountainous.
So this particular project is taken in Indian Himalayan context, and as we all know, Indian Himalaya is highly exposed to climate change and climate variability. In last few years, this region has seen sudden extreme events, and the communities are really at risk. So against this backdrop, I think this project is very important, and the uniqueness of this project is that it has focused on the multi-sectoral approach that we need to adopt, because it is the farming community who is really at risk, and these are the smallholder farmers, and essentially the farming system of these smallholder farmers is based on crop and livestock, and both these crop and livestock are highly climate sensitive sectors or livelihood support system. So they are at stake.
Agriculture has been the mainstay of rural livelihoods of the state of Uttarakhand. Land degradation is therefore a serious problem here. Tension is brewing in the land of gods, particularly in the hills of Kumaon, where lies the quaint district of Champavat. Champavat is the least developed district in Uttarakhand with a very low share in the state GDP. The problems faced here are: the climate change in Uttarakhand will increasingly force people to abandon farming in the high altitudes. The outmigration of the men has surged in the feminization of the agriculture labor. 50% of Himalayan springs are dying, out of which 90% of the population depend.
When we interacted with farming communities during initial consultations, farmers had many stories to tell, about their vulnerabilities. The springs are drying, the apple cultivation is not possible because the chilling requirements are not met. The snowfall that used to happen in that region is not happening anymore. This particular area is known as money order economy, and this has seen the feminization of farming. That all the able-bodied men are migrating. So it is ultimately the women who are into farming and other activities.
आज से 30-40 साल पहले हमारे यहाँ काफ़ी क्लाइमेट जो था बहुत ही ठंडा था। वो टेम्परेचर जब बढ़ना शुरू हुआ तो सेव की बर्ड्स नहीं बनी, सेव नहीं निकले। जब जो सेव आए तो उनकी क्वालिटी बढ़िया नहीं थी, तो धीरे धीरे हमारा सब चौपट हो गया।
The project, Climate Smart Action and Strategies in Northwestern Himalayan Region for Sustainable Livelihoods of Agriculture Dependent Communities, aim to improve the adaptive capacity of rural small and marginal farmers, including hill women, by introducing a combination of climate smart farming technologies along with required social engineering and capacity building processes. Climate Resilient Agri Practices is conceived by Adaptation Fund Board, developed and propagated by NABARD and implemented by BAIF.
What we have done under the program is it is a multi-sectoral approach. Various interventions, technologies and services, climate smart technologies are introduced at a family level. At the center of our program are hill women and small and marginal farmers, and apart from that, entire process that we have adopted is natural resource based planning as well as community based planning, community led planning, and also the process of implementation and region specificity. Lot of interventions by blending science and technology and also considering the region specificity we have introduced.
2016 में नाबार्ड बायफ ने अडेप्टेशन फंड के अंदर एक क्लाइमेट चेंज प्रोजेक्ट हमने स्टार्ट करा। पहला कंपोनेंट था हमारा कम्युनिटी मोबिलाइजेशन और उनको अवेयर कराना कि क्लाइमेट चेंज हो चुका है, उससे हम कैसे अडेप्ट करें। दूसरा हमारा इसमें कंपोनेंट था स्प्रिंग सेट रेजनोवेशन। तो हमने 15 स्प्रिंग सेट साइट, जिसको ट्रेडिशनली हम लोग नौला कहते हैं, उनको आइडेंटिफाई करा और उनको आर्टिफिशियल राउंड वाटर रिचार्ज और वाटर कंजर्वेशन स्ट्रक्चर के थ्रू दोबारा से पानी को हमने रिचार्ज यहाँ पे कराया और उसके रिजल्ट बड़े अच्छे आ रहे हैं। पॉली हाउस के अंदर हमने अंदर कल्टीवेशन कराया क्योंकि यहाँ पे वाइल्ड लाइफ का मैनेज था, प्लस यहाँ पे ओले और इन सब चीज़ों की समस्याएं थी। हमने छोटे पॉली हाउसेज बनाए जिनका कॉस्ट भी कम है, 20 से 25 हज़ार के आसपास। उसके अलावा हमने ड्रिप इरिगेशन सिस्टम भी यहाँ चालू करा। पानी की भी कमी है तो हम लोग पर ड्रॉप मोर ड्रॉप हम लोग चाहते थे कि यहाँ पे पानी का ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा एफिशिएंट यूज हो सके। उसके अलावा हमने रेन वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग स्ट्रक्चर्स यहाँ पे बनाए ताकि छत में जो पानी गिरता है उसका भी हम इस्तेमाल कर सकें। पहाड़ों में एनिमल हस्बेंड्री हमेशा से ही पार्ट एंड पार्सल रही है, तो हमने जो पुराने कैटल शेड्स हो चुके थे उनको रेनोवेट करा, आर्टिफिशियल इंसेमिनेशन और नया जो तरीका आजकल सॉर्टेड सीमेंट उसका हमने यूज करा। इससे भी काफ़ी फैमिलीज को यहाँ पे फ़ायदा मिला।
The project included 5 major interventions: water resource development, climate resilient farming practices, improved animal husbandry, forest community ownership, and women empowerment. Water resource development included natural spring regeneration and recharge measures, rooftop rainwater harvesting tank, drip and sprinklers for water use efficiency, water channelization for improved access to water near houses, and water using solar pumps.
11 परिवारों ने पहले अपना एक समूह बनाया। जलवायु परिवर्तन योजना की तहत से नेपियर घास लगवाई, ट्रेंचिंग खुदवाए, तालाब बनवाए और पेड़ पौधे लगाए यहाँ पे, ताकि हमारी पानी की जो नोले में कमी आ रही थी उसकी बढ़ोतरी हो जाए करके।
For climate resilient farming practices, several initiatives were taken. Vegetable cultivation under protected conditions using low-cost bamboo-based polyhouses, conservation and revival of niche native crops in Himalayan region, promotion of temperate and subtropical fruit species plantation, participation fodder and silvipasture development on degraded community pasture lands known as वन panchayats on the private ones.
बाइक के द्वारा हमें पेड़, आड़ू के पेड़, खुबानी के पेड़, अखरोट के पेड़ और सेब के पेड़ मिले हैं, जिससे हमें बहुत फ़ायदा हो रहा है। पॉली हाउस से भी हमें बहुत फ़ायदा होता है, उसमें लगातार हम सब्ज़ी पैदा करते हैं, जिससे लगभग हमें 50-60 हज़ार की लगभग इनकम हो जाती है।
हम इसमें सब्जी उगाते हैं, टमाटर, गोभी, शिमला मिर्च और मटर। इससे हमें बहुत फ़ायदा होता है, जानवरों से भी बचाव होता है और पाला भी पड़ता है यहाँ बहुत, और हम इससे साल भर में आमदनी 60-70 हज़ार रुपये कमा लेते हैं।
Most of the families here have their own cattle. With scientific and modern technology interventions, milk production increased drastically. The use of artificial insemination methods helped in providing healthy Jersey cows.
पहले कठुआ गाय थी जो 2-3 लीटर दूध देती थी, अब उसकी नस्ल सुधार कर वाइफ वालों ने जो है कि असली नस्ल के इंजेक्शन लगा के 15-20 लीटर दूध देने वाली गाय बना दी है।
To increase the availability of fodder, fuel, timber and water by restoration of degraded forest and pasture lands through community-based systems, we initiated forest community ownership. This involved restoration of community forest lands, plantation of local indigenous varieties, and establishment of वन पंचायत समितिज।
महिलाओं ने मिलजुल कर सब पेड़ पौधे लगाए। वाइफ की तरफ से हमें बहुत लाभ मिला। यहाँ हमने एक समूह बनाया, पानी भी मिला पीने के लिए, हरी पत्ती मिलती है, सूखी पत्ती मिलती है, लकड़ी मिलती है। यहाँ से बहुत सहायता। पहले हम कितनी दूर जाते थे, सुबह 9 बजे जाते थे, 3 बजे घर आते थे। अब हमें यहाँ नज़दीकी से बहुत लाभ हो रहा है, बहुत सहायता मिल रही है इस जंगल से।
To bring women to the center of development and decision making, to empower them socially and reduce drudgery, and to ensure and uphold their entitlements, we initiated several women empowerment programs. Women-centric community-based organizations, gender-sensitive adaptation strategies.
हमारे समूह का नाम जय माँ संतोषी है। हम प्रति महीने 100 रुपये जमा करते हैं और आपस में लेन देन ब्याज सहित वसूल करते हैं।
हम अपने समूह की 18 सदस्य हैं। हमने 50-50 रुपया हर महीने का जमा किया है। उसमें हमारी अभी 1,28,000 हुई है। उससे हमें बहुत फ़ायदा है। किसी समय भी किसी को घर बनाने के लिए या गाय खरीदने के लिए या किसी चीज़ की भी ज़रूरत हो तो उसमें से हम अपना पैसा में लेते हैं। अपना समूह में हम उसमें ब्याज सहित फिर रखते हैं। इससे हमें बहुत फ़ायदा हुआ है, पैसे भी हमारे बहुत हुए।
The impact of the project was tremendous. Of the 4,000 population, over 800 families and over 500 women farmers benefited. 5.5 MCM water augmentation was established through 15 spring regeneration. 26,000 man-days of work was generated. 136 hectares of forest regeneration. 120,000 trees have been planted. Women SHGs are now able to generate savings up to rupees 26 lakhs. Productivity leap is 35% in agriculture, 25% in horticulture, and 50% in dairy production. The net average annual income enhancement is up to 25 to 30K per family. 72 land races and 22 indigenous food crops are being conserved by community along with established seed banks. 101 strong and vigilant community-based organizations have been mobilized.
I feel overall this effort has resulted into creating a model, and evidence has been created in Indian Himalayan region, and now after 5 to 6 years this model is kind of mature model which is ready for replication in other parts of Indian Himalayan region.
बायफ डेवलपमेंट रिसर्च फाउंडेशन द्वारा चंपावत जनपद के 10 ग्राम सभाओं के 27 गांवों में जलवायु परिवर्तन अनुकूलन परियोजना का संचालन कर रहे हैं। हम लोग समय पर इस कार्यक्रम के संचालन करने में हम सफल रहे हैं। तो मैं संपूर्ण टीम का, नाबार्ड की टीम का, बायफ के सभी अपने उच्च अधिकारियों का और ग्रामवासियों का धन्यवाद करते हुए सबको धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ इस परियोजना के संचालन के लिए।
The story of Champavat is a story of hope and transformation. It embodies resilience amidst changing landscapes and deteriorating livelihood. A story that has become a silver lining among many developmental projects undertaken in other parts of the Himalayas facing adverse effects of climate change. Human civilization have a long-standing relationship with the sea that spans nearly 200,000 years. Coastal zones occupy less than 15% of Earth's land surface, yet they accommodate more than 60% of the world's population, and it is predicted that by year 2025, up to 75% of humanity would be residing in coastal areas. In India, nearly 100 million people live along the coastline and rely on climate-dependent activities like agriculture, marine fisheries and aquaculture. Today, the livelihood security of these coastal communities is under stress due to high population density, urbanization and industrial development, which has led to a high rate of coastal environmental degradation and frequent occurrence of natural disasters.
The coastal areas along the Bay of Bengal is highly vulnerable to disasters like cyclone. Every year we will be getting 2 to 3 cyclones along the coast. Not only cyclones, we also face shoreline erosion, then salinization of coastal lands and aquifers.
On one hand, utilization of coastal areas and their resources make a significant contribution to the economic sector. But on the other hand, the use of coastal areas ignoring aspects of sustainability and suitability of land has led to pressure on the region. The need of the day is an integrated coastal management plan with a holistic approach. NABARD, in collaboration with the Adaptation Fund Board, paired up with MSSRF to address and provide a feasible alternative to balance various interests. The problem: inundation of low-lying coastal lands with seawater, accelerated coastal erosion, degradation of ecosystems, natural calamities, severe crop loss and soil degradation. In 2015, Project Conservation and Management of Coastal Resources as a potential adaptation strategy for sea level rise, funded by Adaptation Fund Board, supported by NABARD and implemented by MSSRF, came into existence to address hard and stark coastal problems.
Most of the villagers have the bitter experience of past cyclones hitting the coastal line. In this backdrop, the project is very important to build the adaptive capacities and climate resilient livelihood options for the stakeholders and the local community.
Ever since its advent, the project has done wonders. To enhance the adaptive capacity of the coastal community to climate change vulnerability, an adaptation strategy for sea level rise was implemented by Krishna mangrove restoration model, which was successfully experimented in Pichavaram mangrove wetlands of Tamil Nadu and Krishna and Godavari mangrove wetlands in Andhra Pradesh.
The role of Forest Department is very crucial in identifying and allocation of land, particularly for mangrove cultivation. Keeping in view the benefits of the project are accruing to the most vulnerable community affected by the cyclonic storms and surges.
It was planned to restore 200 hectares of degraded mangroves in 2 years. The Forest Department, Government of Andhra Pradesh provided permission to restore in Solaragundi extension.
ఈ అరుదుగా ఉండే మడ అడవులు లేదంటే మ్యాంగ్రూవ్ అడవులు మనకు ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో ఉండడము ప్రకృతి ఇచ్చిన వరంగా భావిస్తున్నాము. ఈ ఇండియా స్టేట్ ఆఫ్ ఫారెస్ట్ రిపోర్ట్ 2017 ప్రకారము ఈ మడ అడవుల కవరేజ్ 404 స్క్వేర్ కిలోమీటర్లు ఉన్నది. దానిలో 2015-17 సర్వే రిపోర్టు ప్రకారము సుమారుగా ఈ మడ అడవులు 37 స్క్వేర్ కిలోమీటర్లు పెరగడం జరిగింది. అందులో ఈ కృష్ణా మ్యాంగ్రూవ్ వెట్లాండ్లో 29 స్క్వేర్ కిలోమీటర్స్ అదేవిధంగా గోదావరి బేసిన్లో 4 స్క్వేర్ కిలోమీటర్స్ ఈ మడాడువుల పెరుగుదలైతే ఉన్నది. అంతేకాకుండా ఈ మడాడువులు అభివృద్ధికి, పునరుద్ధరణకు, రక్షణలో అటవీ శాఖతో పాటు ఎన్జిఓస్ లైక్ ఎంఎస్ స్వామినాథన్ రీసెర్చ్ ఫౌండేషన్ వారి పాత్ర ఎంతైనా ఉంది. అట్ ప్రజెంట్ ఆంధ్రప్రదేశ్లో ఈ మడాడువుల అభివృద్ధికి, పునరుద్ధరణకు, రక్షణకు వివిధ ఫండింగ్ సోర్సెస్ ద్వారా ప్రణాళికలు తయారు చేసి సన్నిహితంగా ఉన్నది.
The forest department also took up monitoring, particularly during the plantation stage. Trainings were organized for local community, other stakeholders, NGOs, forest department staff, particularly on mangrove restoration techniques.
Project is designed to link ecological rehabilitation of degraded mangroves, utilization of saline lands for livelihood development, and preparing the communities for facing the climate change challenges through adaptation measures.
We have implemented this project in Krishna district in 3 villages, namely Sorlagundi, Nali and Baswanepalayam. In this project, we have restored nearly 200 hectares of degraded mangroves, where we have planted more than 3 lakh saplings.
Planting of mangroves were done in 2 methods. Planting of nursery raised saplings, pot seedlings, and direct planting of propagules or seeds of mangrove plants. The engagement of laborers provided employment to the local community. The community was oriented on the mangrove restoration, and the engagement of laborers provided employment to them.
ఒకప్పుడు ఈ పర మీద మడమొక్కలు లేకుండా ఖాళీగా ఉండేది. సముద్ర నీటి మట్టం పెరగటం వలన సముద్ర తీరం కోతకు గురవుతూ ఉండేది. స్వామినాథన్ రీసెర్చ్ ఫౌండేషన్ వాళ్ళు మేము కలిసి ఈ పర మీద మడమొక్కలు నాటాము. దానివల్ల తుఫాన్లు, గాలులు రాకుండా మా గ్రామాన్ని కాపాడుకుంటున్నాం.
We have also demonstrated integrated mangrove fishery farming in abandoned shrimp farms in 50 hectares, where now the local community uses those abandoned shrimp farms for their livelihood. They are actually culturing sea bass, crabs and shrimps.
Under the integrated mangrove fishery farming system, mangroves are integrated with fish culture. This is a new kind of farming system wherein conventional earthen aquaculture ponds are modified in such a way to provide about 30% of the area for raising mangroves and the remaining for fish cultivation.
ఈ చెరువులు ఖాళీగా ఉండేవి. స్వామినాథన్ ఫౌండేషన్ సంస్థ వారు ఈ చెరువులను తవ్వించడం జరిగింది. సంస్థ వారు మేము కలిసి ఈ చెరువుల్లో మడమొక్కలు పెంచడం జరుగుతుంది. పోటు వలన ఈ చెరువులకి నీరు పెట్టడం వల్ల డీజిల్ ఇంజిన్ ఆ ఖర్చు తగ్గుతుంది. ఈ చెరువుల్లో పీతలు, రొయ్యలు, చేపలు పెంచుతున్నాము. మడమొక్కల వల్ల ఆ చేపల పెంపకం లాభసాటిగానే ఉంది.
IMFFS translates into a sustainable source of revenue for impoverished families and has provided hope to those forced to abandon their previous livelihoods in shrimp farming without undue damage to the coastal ecosystem.
Apart from that, we also demonstrated cage farming, that is culture of sea bass in the cages. We have deployed around 10 cages in the backwaters of Krishna, and people are rearing fishes up to 100 grams of sea bass in that cages. Then they were selling to the farmers for further rearing.
Under this cage farming method, juvenile fish from a hatchery or those caught from the normal fishing operation, which is usually discarded, are reared in confinement to market size in estuaries. Marginalized fishing families from the project village were mobilized into groups. They were trained on various aspects of cage farming, including site selection, cage construction, feed management and farm management.
మాకు చెరువులు, పొలాలు అలాంటివి ఏమీ లేవండి. మాకు స్వామినాథ రీసెర్చ్ అండ్ ఫౌండేషన్ వాళ్ళు ఈ కేజీ కల్చర్ మీద మాకు ట్రైనింగ్ ఇచ్చి కేజీ కల్చర్ చేసుకోమని చెప్పారు మాకు. ఇందులో మేము 2 అంగుళాలు సీడ్ వేసి దీన్ని 100 గ్రాముల వరకు పెంచుతామండి. 100 గ్రాముల వరకు పెంచి మేము లైవ్గా అమ్ముకుంటాము. వీటి వల్ల మాకు బాగా లాభంగా ఉంది. దీనివల్ల మేము స్వామినాథన్ రీసెర్చ్ అండ్ ఫౌండేషన్ వారికి కృతజ్ఞతలు తెలుపుతున్నాం.
The impact of the project has been a resounding success.